fractional exponent rule is another way of writing a radical. So radicals and fractional exponents go together, and we haven't really spent any time on them in Algebra 2. You have always had a fraction. So if you had 3 squared, that's just 9, right? That's the same as writing 3 to the 2 over 1 power. So you've always had a fraction, but the fraction's denominator has always been 1. So we've always been evaluating with whole exponents, right? So now my denominator is what's causing the new thing to happen. So the denominator is a radical root. And then x to the m is just the power that we've been dealing with all along. So the radical root is the denominator. It could be a square root, it could be a cube root, it could be a fifth root, but it's a radical. So in other words, a fractional exponent means you find the nth root of the expression raised to the mth power, and it doesn't matter which one you do first. You can either do the radical or the power first, and then vice versa second. So there's no order of operations for this. Do what works best. So 25 to the 1/2 power is not multiplication. So the answer is not 12.5. This is the square root of 25 raised to the first power. Usually we don't write a 2 when we're taking a square root. That's called the index. Usually we just write the square root of 25. Those are the same exact statement. So the square root of 25 is just 5. I'm trying to think of another example where we don't write like an index and we just know that that's what it is. Oh, well, when we see log functions, you'll see this. So a log function, if I give you a different base, it's a different base. But when we get to log functions, if I don't write a base there, it's a base of 10. So it's an instance where it's kind of assumed what is in that position. Just like square roots, we just assume it's the square root of the number. We don't have to write the 2. So on number 2, this is the square root of 16 cubed. If you know 16 cubed in your head, I give you a lot of credit. I don't. So order of operations, I'm going to take the square root first, make it a smaller number, and then I could cube that smaller number. So what's the square root of 16? 4, right? And then 4 cubed, you should know. 4 times 4 times 4 is how much? Should know 4 cubed. So 4 times 4 is 16, and then 16 times 4 is 64. So that's going to be one that you start to learn in your head, is that cube. All right, number 3, now our denominator is a cube. So this is the cube root of 27. So that's asking you what times what times what multiplied by itself 3 times is 27. So the cube root of 27 is 3, and then I'm going to do 3 squared. Because you don't know 27 squared, right? So you can't do 27 squared first. So do the smaller number and then square it. So my answer would be 9. Let me do a couple more with you. I'm going to skip down to some of those negatives. Look at 7 and look at 10. So on number 7, this is the cube root of negative 27, and then it's to the negative first power at the end. Can I take the cube root of a negative number? So a number times itself 3 times, because it's odd, 3 of them, could give you a negative number, right? Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 will get me back to negative 27. So this is negative 3, and it's being raised to the negative first power. What does a negative exponent do? It takes the reciprocal of your answer. So my answer is negative 1/3, because I'm taking the reciprocal of negative 3, so I get negative 1/3. And let's take a look at number, I guess we could just do 8, and then you can try some of the rest of these. So number 8, I'm taking the square root of 4, and then I'm going to raise it to the negative third power at the end. So the square root of 4 is just 2. And then what's 2 to the negative third power? You're going to cube it and take the reciprocal. So power family of 2. What's 2 in the column? 2 to the negative third, right, on the left side of that table of powers is how much? 1/8, right? Because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And I'm going to take the reciprocal 1/8. So the answer is positive 1/8. A negative exponent just takes the reciprocal. So don't skip steps. I would always take the time, like on number 4, take the time to write it out as the radical with an index of 5. 32 is underneath, and then you're going to square it at the end. This one you might not be familiar with, but if you're going to raise something to the 5th power, it's a really small number. So like what's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1? Just 1. What's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2? It's 32. Because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So the table of powers, I want you to be familiar that 32 is a power of 2. It's in the power of 2 family. So the 5th root of 32 is 2. And then you're going to do 2 squared at the end and end with 4. I'll keep throwing 32 on there. So you'll get familiar that 32 is a power of 2. All right, try those last few as some practice on your own, and we'll put up the answers in just a couple minutes. So there's the answers. I'll leave them up for a couple minutes in case you haven't finished. The biggest one to point out, you can do number 13, but you cannot do number 15 when you get down to the bottom.